Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 SimPilot, and today we are going to look at another excellent new addition to the fly-by-wire A32NX mod in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that is the correct vertical speed or flight path angle mode selection that the new Autopilot enables us to use. We're going to see how important that is, and I've even got an example of a previous stream where it's been highlighted how difficult it is when this mode isn't used or able to be used correctly. The team have done a fantastic job updating the Autopilot, but as I said in my last updated Autopilot video, this is an experimental test version. Please do not worry if you do not have it yet in your version of your fly-by-wire mod. It is not yet available in the installer, but it will be at some point, so please don't open a request with fly-by-wire. They're doing an excellent job, and this is just to show you what features are coming with that Autopilot, and therefore you will hopefully be ready to use them when they become available in your simulator. I'm really excited about it. It is a great new feature, and I think it's going to make a big difference and open up a whole new world of approaches that we can fly more accurately now. As ever, I am a real-world Airbus pilot, but this video is not for any real-world use. It's just for our use in home flight simulators to give you a bit of extra context on your home simulations. We're here in Corfu, which is where that live stream happened actually, and I'm going to fly around a bit, show you some of the other uses of this vertical speed mode, tell you exactly what was wrong before and what's going to be useful in the future for us. So let's get started. So here we are on the flight deck, and let's talk about what this new feature is and what was wrong with it before. Previously in the Microsoft Flight Simulator A320neo, even with the mod, the fly-by-wire mod, there was an issue where in order to use vertical speed you had to first engage managed climb or open climb, managed descent or open descent. Typically a managed climb or open climb will be a full climb thrust climb, so it's a bit aggressive, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So if we're here at flight level 80 and I was to select flight level 120, when I pull on the altitude knob it will go into open climb, it will pitch up and it will increase the thrust all the way to climb thrust, as you'll see here. After all, that's why we have these set. They should be set to the climb gate there. Slight issue with my quadrant at the moment. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but there we go. That's where it should be. The problem with this is obviously it's quite an aggressive climb. Here we go, we're going 3,000 feet per minute, and in fact it's not even, could even be higher than that. There we go, it will start to increase now, 3,600 feet per minute. We've only got 2,000 feet to go. A general rule of thumb is that it's quite nice to sort of, if you're within 2,000 feet, to reduce that rate of descent or rate of climb to 2,000 feet per minute. So I can do that now by selecting vertical speed, and that's how it's been in the mod. The auto thrust channel is not quite functioning yet. The auto thrust does work, it's just the display is not integrated fully yet. That's all in progress. Again, as I said, this is a very experimental version. But there we go, outstar. But this feature will be so useful as we move forward. So what would we do in the real aircraft if we're, say, now we're level at flight level 120 and air traffic said climb flight level 130? And this does happen. It happens quite regularly, in particular, of course, in very busy airspace. So I'll let it level off. There we go, out. And now I can select 130, and as I said, previously you'd have to pull for open climb and then engage a vertical speed. Now that gives us two things to do, which is not ideal, and also it can lead us to having a full thrust, the thrust coming on and off, you know, and obviously if you've ever been a passenger on an airliner, you'll know that that's not how things are done generally, or you'd be sitting there hearing the engines rev up and down all the time. So these days, thanks to this new Autopilot, I can wind in the vertical speed, let's say 1,000, just sit it there, it just sits there waiting. If you do nothing, it will eventually clear off in the real aircraft, but there it is, 1,000, and then I can just pull, little down arrow, pull, and now that engages that plus 1,000 feet per minute, which is fantastic. That's a really neat feature, and it seems a little bit, it might seem a bit sort of small, but it's so important for so many reasons. So now the thrust comes on, we get a nice controlled straight away 1,000 feet per minute climb, and in real life this would help us avoid TCAS issues as well, things like that, where you've got say there was an aircraft above us, because after all, if aircraft are being vectored near each other by air traffic control, that would explain why we are getting these single 1,000 feet level offs. So the first great feature of being able to select the vertical speed from the flight level we're at, pulling it and immediately getting it, is that we get a much more controlled rate of climb or descent. Something to note in the climb is that if you're much higher up, you will need to be very careful using vertical speed to climb. Some people don't like using it, and in some aircrafts in particular that is it's a very valid concern. The reason is, if I do an open climb now, so if I wind that climb up, let's wind it up to 230 and pull, it would be in thrust climb, open climb. Now we're going to get climb thrust, and the airplane's going to climb, and it's going to target 250 knots. So it's going to maintain the thrust at climb thrust, and it's going to pitch to maintain 250 knots. If we start to run out of energy, unlikely at these low levels, let's make it a climb to 360. If we run out of energy like we are here, the airplane lowers the nose, so it's speed protected. It's going to maintain that speed. So we've seen that we might want to use vertical speed for short level changes, but ultimately using a speed protected mode like open climb is typically nicer. The reason we can use vertical speed down here is that we've got so much extra performance around flight level 150 and below, and even higher, that using vertical speed gives us a much more controlled way to climb the aircraft. There is some people will refer to it as very stupid for climbing, because if I was to pull the vertical speed and wind up, let's say I could wind in 5,000 feet per minute, and the real aircraft would do this as well. It's going to target 5,000 feet per minute on the climb, and as you'll see, we are losing speed, and it will do this all the way until some other protections kick in, and there are other protections. It will actually not let you do this. The vertical speed will eventually revert. It will warn you, it will do a triple click, and it will lower the nose anyway. The Airbus is very clever like this. It's got a lot of protections. So this is working okay for now, although very shortly it won't be. But obviously at higher flight levels, up at flight level 360, it would be very easy if you were to select, say, 1,500 feet per minute, which sounds like a normal rate of climb. You'd actually find that the airplane probably couldn't do it at the higher flight levels, and you'd get into this situation here. As I said, the real aircraft does have protections. The protections aren't implemented yet in this experimental version. What I can do now is push level off, VS0, and the nose will come down. We use push to level off in the real aircraft when we want to override a mode, for example, such as outstar. It's quite an aggressive mode, push to level off, and as you can see, it puts the nose down quite seriously. And there we go. We start to enter normal flight envelope again as we accelerate. If we look at the descent now, we will see that using vertical speed is not an issue in the descent. So I'm currently in an open descent, so thrust is at it should be at idle, and we're coming down to flight level 200. Let's say we were cleared down to flight level 100, and I do an open descent. There we go. Thrust is now actually coming back to idle, and I could set vertical speed 1,000, no problem. Engines will spool up a bit to try and maintain the speed. Now if I do an open descent, we're still speed protected, but of course the same thing applies here. If I wind on a huge rate of descent, for example 4,000 feet per minute, the speed will increase. We don't get that speed protection here, so the airplane will fly this vertical speed, and it will try to maintain that speed with the auto thrust. So we have idle thrust, but it's not good enough, so it will accelerate away. So that's again why we mostly use managed or open descent, because in open descent it will target that speed just as it did for the climb. The difference here, of course, is that if we pull a vertical speed in the descent, there's no risk of us getting slow and running out of energy, because if we get slow, the airplane will add thrust. Likewise, in the climb, there's no risk of overspeeding when you use vertical speed, because the airplane will reduce the thrust as it reaches the target speed. So there is something to consider, and the reason to use vertical speed in the descent is going to be if there was aircraft beneath you, of course, so small level changes, but in particular terrain. Let's say we had mountains beneath us right now, or high terrain as we're heading into an airport like Milan. Then we might let's set an altitude of 6,000 feet, and there we go. As we get nearer to that altitude, just like what we saw earlier, we might want to reduce that rate of descent, because we don't want to be diving down at the terrain. So we'd have our terrain display up here. Now I'm just flying over the sea at the moment around the island of Corfu, but yeah, as you can see, you would then select your vertical speed. And the same thing goes, where if we were flying level, instead of going into an open descent just above terrain where we get idle thrust and then selecting vertical speed, which is what we had to do previously, we can now just select our vertical speed and pull, and away we go. So it's a really nice addition, much more controlled, much more representative of what we would do with the real aircraft, and finally the vertical speed mode becomes useful. I have a video on the bird track FPA, and it's important to note that the same thing is true with flight path angle mode, but we don't typically use that up at these altitudes. It's mainly used for the approach. So what I'm going to do is show you a clip from a previous stream where I flew the VOR into Corfu, and I'll show you what was wrong there. Let's go to flap full. And you wouldn't do this, you'd normally leave this here and I could select the FPA. As I said earlier, I'm going to have to wind the altitude down and start an open descent. It's the only way to convince it to work properly. By 900 feet I'm going to take out the autopilot anyway. Okay, we're still working our way towards it. Might have to come a little bit left to get onto that radial. 9.7, we're starting at 8.8, remember? Going to have to be quick with this. See if we can make this work. Okay, let's not fly too close to the hills. 9.3. 9.2, 9.1, right, let's pull that, let's set an FPA minus, again this is not what you'd have to do in the real airplane, this is more of a nuisance, but there we go, 3.4 is what we want. So as you can see, we use the track FPA mode to fly the VOR approach, and it's also used for other approaches such as localizers, NDBs, RNAV approaches where you're only using lateral navigation. We use the flight path angle mode, but what we had to do was start an open descent and then select in our vertical speed or our flight path angle. This is not realistic, it's not very convenient, and what we'll do now is go and have a look at doing that in a much more convenient and appropriate way. So we are now heading back to Corfu to fly this approach, and I want to set it up. So here we go on our charts, just to show you guys, we're going to fly the VOR Yankee 34, so we're going to fly to DRX and then straight in, 2,900 feet, we'll fly level, and then we'll descend at 8.8 miles from the Golf Alpha Romeo VOR, and we're going to descend at our 3.4 degree angle. So pretty much what we did the last time, except slightly different arrival, but it's not going to matter. So we'll go to flight plan and select the arrival. Let's have the VOR 34 Yankee. Approach via DRX, which is straight in, insert, and I'm going to go direct to DRX, insert. In RadNav we have the 1088, which is the VOR tuned with its course of, I can show you this, course of 343, and we are getting pretty much set up. So as we get close enough to the VOR, I'm going to select my descent. We'll get down to 2,900 feet as per the chart, which we've got here. We descend to that 2,900 feet, and then I need to be fully configured, so I need to have my gear down, and I'll be going to flat full shortly before. By the way, we are very low, it's just for the purpose of this video. You wouldn't normally be this low this far out. But here we go, so from 2,900 feet, we'll fly inbound on this VOR radial. I have a video on tracking VOR radials on the channel if you need help with that. Then 8.8 Golf Alpha Romeo is when we need to start our 3.4 degree descent. Now it won't actually start its descent immediately, of course. It will take a second for the airplane to head down that slope, so we'll end up high if we do it at 8.8. So I need to do it slightly earlier, so I'm going to do it 0.3 nautical miles earlier, which in this case would be 9.1 nautical miles from the Golf Alpha Romeo. See how this chart is misleading? It looks like there's a big gap there, but that is only 0.2 of a nautical mile between this marker here and this. It's just a visual representation, so don't be fooled into thinking you have more time than you do. So at 9.1 I'm going to pull the flight path angle. I'm going to show you how to do that now. What we can do is, we're actually already here at 2,900, as we know, slightly incorrect, but there we go. You'll see that you can select it, so I'm going to wind it in, and I can do that now. Let's say 3.4. Now it will eventually disappear if you don't use it. So there it is, 3.4. And then I have that ready, so 1 mile before the descent. So the descent is supposed to start at 8.8. So 0.3 miles before, I need to pull that 3.4. So I'm going to select it like that 1 mile before, so 9.8. So at 9.8 miles from the VOR, I'm going to put 3.4 in here, like that. Then at 9.1 miles from the VOR, I can pull that to start the descent, and the airplane will start down. That way we don't have the risk of leveling off, because previously you saw I had to wind this altitude down and then pull it to start an open descent and then select a vertical speed, or a flight path angle in this case. The problem was that if we do that, this altitude is beneath us, the airplane will try and capture this altitude. In glide slope mode, if we were using an INS, it wouldn't, but because we're doing this in track FPA and flying the flight path angle, it would actually try and level off. Now luckily in my live stream, I knew what was coming, I knew the issue already. So in my live stream, I wound the altitude so low that I was already going to disconnect the autopilot and it wouldn't matter, and turn off the flight directors. But in this case, we can do it properly now, which is just great news. So here we go, we're 22 miles out, so we're getting closer to that VOR. Starting to come in on our inbound of 343 on that radial. Let's give it a go. So time to slow down. I'm going to go to manage speeds. Here we go then, approaching DRX, and then the airplane will actually use nav mode to turn onto that inbound course. But I'm going to bring up the VOR display, and you'll see that that VOR radial is coming in now. So I can let the airplane do that turn. Here it goes. Or hopefully it does. Doesn't look like it is though, so I'm going to do it myself. Let's go. Oh no, it's doing it gently. So around the turn goes, 16 miles out from the Golf Alpha Romeo now. So remember, nothing to do just yet, but slow down and configure. So we're below the amber, so there goes to flap 1. Again, this magenta bug shouldn't be there. It would target the green airspeed without actually showing it. Okay, below 200 knots, the next amber flap limiting speed, we can go to flap 2. Great stuff. Still 14 miles out, so plenty of room. And you'll see it's starting to establish inbound. So what I'm going to do is pull the track 343, which is our inbound track. Should actually display on the PFD as well, but there we go. We're ever so slightly to the left now because our course bar's gone to the right. So I might go to 345 for a little bit, just to slowly bring our track back towards that radial. Great stuff. We're doing absolutely fine for energy now, for once in one of my videos. We are well below the profile, so we're going to come in over the island now. And just to refresh you, here's the chart to show you. And we might even appear on the charts soon. Oh no, it doesn't work on this one. But we're now coming in, we're now heading from DRX to this 9 mile point, Golf Alpha Romeo. So we're on this leg here. Now the real aircraft, you can actually select or show the FPA in here, and it will stay there. I think it's in the region of 45 seconds, something like that. That's not an exact number, but it's quite a long time. It seems to disappear a bit quickly in this mod at the moment. Yeah, that's not even 10 seconds. So I think that would be nice if that could stay in the window for a bit longer, because that gives you more room to do other things as you prepare. Right, let's get the gear down. Flaps to 3. So we said 8.8, so at 9.8 miles I would wind that into the window, but I think in this mod it's actually going to disappear a bit quickly, so we'll just do that slightly closer in. So we're gear down flaps 3. I'm going to select flap full about half a mile from the descent. So that would be about 9.4, something like that. So there we go, 9.8. I should wind in the FPA now to 3.4. I don't think it's going to stay there for long enough, so we shall see. So 9.2, let's go to flaps full, and there's our 3.4, and pull. FPA 3.4, and down we go, 8.8. We are starting our descent from 3.4. And now we're going to follow our chart altitudes as we descend. So the first altitude we want to be at 7 miles, 2180. So let's see how that works out. And you've got the recommended altitude here. There's a radio altimeter that comes alive, shows that our figures are correct so far. Let's set that 343 now, because we are definitely established inbound straight in. Okay, so 7 miles, the recommended altitude is 2180. And what we should see is that we are pretty close. So there we go, we're just passing into 710, there's 2180. So we're maybe a tiny bit high. So you can see the importance of selecting that flight path angle slightly earlier. But the great news is, and this is what I really want to focus on today, is that go around altitude now we can select. It's above us, it's not beneath us, the airplane won't capture it or anything silly like that. So yeah, it's there. So let's say that if the go around altitude, well, let's select the actual go around altitude, which in this case is going to be 4,000 feet, and I can, as you can see, wind that in, no problem. All above us, the airplane won't level off. Now there is something to be wary of here. Firstly, that out blue shouldn't be there because the go around altitude is above us, so the airplane won't climb up, won't show the out blue until we enter a climb. There's no armed out mode at the moment, and that's risky. We are pointing straight at the ground now with only vertical speed, or sorry, only flight path angle. So the airplane will keep descending all the way to the ground as it is. So we need to intervene. But there we go. Right, so we're visual now, so we can take out the autopilot, turn off the flight directors, and now maneuver ourselves onto the centre line gently to go and commence our landing into Corfu. So hopefully that video has given you some idea of the advantages we see, but it's going to be particularly useful for these non-precision approaches. 3.4 degree descent, so expecting about 900 feet per minute, something like that for the rest of the arrival. Two whites to reds on the pappies. Wind is from the left, so that means I'm going to be sitting somewhere here. Try and keep yourself right in that centre line. I've probably gone through it a little bit there. Keeping that rate of descent. It's slightly steeper descent path, as you can see. Normally we would do 3 degrees, and the problem with that is pilots will tend to try and reset the picture out of the window into how they see it when they do a 3 degree. So you'll end up getting high if you keep putting the nose up like I do there. So I've got to keep making sure I consciously watch that vertical speed and keep it descending at the same descent rate, sort of 900 feet per minute. There's 3 reds, so maybe we've intercepted the 3 degree pappies, I'm not sure. Sometimes from steeper approaches like that, the pappies are actually running at 3 degrees, so you can sort of intercept them and then carry on with 3 degrees, we shall see. Oh, yeah, getting a bit sensitive. So aiming for that touchdown zone now, flying the airplane towards the middle markers. Idle thrust levers, hold the nose, drift off. There's the touchdown. Oh, keep it on the centre line. And there we go. On the ground in Corfu. So that's it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been useful for you. As ever, all the work done by Fly-by-Wire team, it's an incredible job they've done and continue to do. So anything that's missing here today, as I said, it's an experimental version and they are working very hard, and I'm sure we'll see lots of updates, but it's already amazing to see the progress, and this is a great feature to have implemented properly. It gives us so much more control over the aircraft for these sort of more challenging non-precision style approaches. There'll be plenty more live streams and videos on the channel soon, including tutorials, and I'll take you through some of the updates as the Fly-by-Wire team does their hard work on the Airbus. So do please subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content. And as ever, we will see you very soon in another live stream or tutorial on the channel. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.